Air, Land, and Sea. This is a two-player card game with a war theme. It's not a war game because of the abstract nature, but still, you're gonna see airplanes and battleships and land troops, so that's cool, that's interesting. Again, two-player competitive game in which you will play in rounds. Each round, somebody will score some points. First player to score 12 points wins the game. The game came out a couple of years ago. I've had it in my collection for a while, but for some reason, I don't know why I hadn't played it until recently I saw that the sequel came out. I wanted to try the standalone sequel and I'm like, well, I gotta play the basic game first, otherwise, what is this, anarchy? So I recently played Air, Land, and Sea and I'm gonna tell you a little bit about it. Game is very small, very portable. Matter of fact, if you wanna carry it, even this, like you don't need the box. All you're gonna carry with you is a deck of 18 cards to play, plus 2 cards to decide who is the first player, and plus these cards here. You have these nice tokens here that you use to keep track of score, but again, if you really want the game to be super portable, you don't need them either. You just make a note of the score. So at the beginning of the game, you take these 3 cards representing 3 theaters of operation: land, sea, and air, and you place them in between the 2 players. You shuffle the cards and you give 6 cards to each player, and these are the cards that will be used in the current round. You score points if you win a round, meaning if all cards are played, and at that point the player who controls the most theaters, meaning 2 out of 3, wins the round, and they score 6 points. And at the beginning of the game, we assign these 2 cards, shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. We assign them randomly to decide who plays first, and also the first player wins ties. And after that round, of course, we switch, and we keep switching, otherwise it's not fair. So you score points if all cards are played and you control 2 theaters, and again, in case there is a tie, first player wins. Or, and that's, if that happens, that player, remember, scores 6 points, which is the best possible outcome. You also score points if the opponent thinks they're not gonna make it and they decide to withdraw, in which case the score is gonna be lower, and it depends on how many cards are left in a player's hand. So if I'm the first player, my opponent withdraws and I have between 4 and 6 cards in hand at that point, I score 2 points instead of 6. So as you can see, the earlier the opponent decides they're going to withdraw, so the fewer resources they have committed, the fewer points are allocated. Very simple, very smart idea, and it works very well because you're going to spend some time not just trying to win the battle, but to decide when and if it is the time to retreat. So we got 3 theaters of operations, and once the game starts, starting with the first player, all you're gonna do is you play a card from hand. A card, if played face up, needs to go in the corresponding theater: air for air, sea for sea, and so on and so forth. Some cards will have an effect. If there is a lightning, the effect, lightning bolt, the effect is triggered only once when the card is placed. If there is the infinity symbol, then the effect stays in play for as long as the card is in play, and the effect is visible because a card is played face up, but it may be flipped by game effects. So for example, this card, when you play it, allows you to flip a battle card in any theater. So when it is your turn, you must play a card from hand. Again, if it's played face up with the effect visible, well, that's it for now. And also the combat value is the number that is visible. You can also take any card and play it in any theater face down, in which case, of course, you ignore all the effects, and the combat value that it contributes to that theater is 2. And so, again, cards usually are played in their theater, but suppose there are game effects later that move them. Another important concept is the concept of a covered card. After you play a card in a theater, after the first, you place the other ones on top so that the effects and the numbers are still visible. However, only the card that is on top of a stack can be flipped. Only the uncovered cards can be flipped by game effects. So right now, for example, that 2 could not be flip. It can still be targeted by other effects, for example, the effects that move it, but simply that's the tricky thing. It cannot be flipped. So only uncovered cards can be targeted by flip effects. And suppose that after all is said and done, this is how the battle went. I'm pretty sure a lot of other stuff would happen between game effects and stuff. And suppose that this battle did go until all cards were played, and now we determine who wins. In each theater, the player with the highest combat value wins that theater. So right now, it's 8 to 5. This player wins, and the player has the theater. The player has that theater, and here we got 10 versus 5. This player wins, so this player would win, and since all cards were played, that player scores 6 points. Pretty simple. After a round has been resolved, and a round may be very short in case indeed a player withdrew early on. After that, oh, there was an effect here. I didn't take into account the effects when I counted the score. I just wanted to give you the general sense. After that is the case, shuffle, 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 rinse and repeat. In between rounds, you simply take the card on the right and put it on the left, sliding down the other ones because there may be effects that target adjacent areas. So the theaters do change. We switch the 2 roles, but that is still the general idea. Shuffle, 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 6 cards, etc, etc, etc. So this is how you play Air, Land, and Sea. It is an incredibly simple game. As you've seen from this pretty much full tutorial, of course you'll need to familiarize yourself with the game effects, but the rules are simplicity itself. And yet it is one of those games that really creates a disproportionate amount of depth based on such a simple core idea. There's just a lot of thinking that goes into it, because yes, there is randomness when you're drawing your 6 hand of cards, but after that it's tight. There is no randomness anymore, basically. Yeah, there's a card that maybe lets you draw another card, but after that it's about, well, the cards that I have in my hand and the cards that are played by my opponent. They inform me about what they may still have in hand, what may or may not be in play, what kind of effects may remain there. So it really becomes almost like a game of chess with a lot of thinking that goes into it. I found myself thinking harder than I expected when playing a game where I have 6 cards, my opponent has 6 cards, some may not even have any game effects, but, well, figuring out how to exploit those effects, how to chain things, how to counteract what the opponent does. All of these are very interesting ideas. On top of everything I'm trying to do to pursue my objectives is balanced by the fairly pessimistic consideration of, like, but should I withdraw? Never get too confident, because again, you may have a great hand, but the opponent is able to play their effects better, is able to play different things. They have different cards that will simply get you stuck and get you to lose. And again, losing at the end of a battle is the worst possible thing. Much better to give the opponent 2 points. You may even get to the point when you're the second player, you give up really early just because you want to become the first player, but there are pluses and minuses even in that. I did lose a game precisely because I was ahead and I thought I could afford that, so I just, I gave 2 points to the opponent, giving up right away to be the first player, and those 2 points ended up being what, in the long run, made me lose the game because the opponent won in the following round. So there are pluses and minuses in everything, which I think is really considerable when you have a game this simple. So what you have here is a very simple, very light game. I think anybody can play it, even younger players, really. Maybe the war theme, I hope that I think they have another version with a different theme, because if you have a game like this with these effects, but without the war theme, then you can also have a larger appeal that becomes more of a play with your spouse game, play with your children game. Not everybody enjoys games that have a topical war, but as a game engine, this one makes for a perfectly enjoyable, quick filler. Can play it in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, perfect for a lunch break. travels very well. So I'm very pleased with Air, Land, and Sea, an excellent light game. And in my next video review, we're going to talk about Air, Land, and Sea, Spies, Lies, and Supplies, a standalone expansion for Air, Land, and Sea.